Hey guys, what's up? It's Savannah. Welcome back to another episode of My Thoughts Exactly. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I'm your host of My Thoughts Exactly. Before we get started, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Friday. You're not going to want to miss it. We also upload the video version onto YouTube on Fridays as well. So make sure you are subscribed. And with that being said, you guys, happy Friday. I hope you guys have had a great week so far. And if you haven't, guess what? It's Friday. It's the weekend. You made it. And it's actually Labor Day weekend for those who are participating and celebrating. I hope you have a great long weekend ahead of you. And I hope that you are safe. I hope you have fun. I hope that it is enjoyable. I know for me personally, I am very much looking forward to this long weekend. I have my family coming into town. I'm super excited to see my brother and my mom. My brother's coming in with his girlfriend. That's going to be really fun. We're just going to have a fun family-filled weekend, and I am very, very excited. And I'm also very excited because I feel like after Labor Day is when people kind of start accepting fall a little bit more. I always felt like Labor Day was the turnaround or the turnover weekend of the official start of fall. And I know that the official date for the beginning of fall is like September 22nd or September 23rd or something. But I feel like after Labor Day, it's like, okay, we are transitioning into the fall months. And when I say that no one is more excited than fall in this current moment, or more excited for fall in this current moment than myself, I truthfully mean it. And I will tell you why. This is not your typical, oh, Savannah loves fall. I am saying this because currently I am trying to manifest fall so badly. I am in a sweatshirt and sweatpants. I have a candle lit behind me, and it is currently 80 degrees inside of my house and 97 degrees outside of my house. For whatever reason, you guys, the AC unit in our downstairs has completely just stopped working. It works upstairs, luckily, but it is so freaking warm downstairs. I am sweating, I am overheating, but I am not giving up my fall wardrobe, my sweatshirts, my sweatpants. I'm always in them regardless. It could be 103 degrees outside. I will still be in a sweatshirt and sweatpants and inside in my 68-degree home. And I feel like right now I am very much being tested with that theory because it is so warm inside and it is so warm outside. I have my iced coffee here ready to go, and I'm honestly just like pressing it up against every single part of my body because I'm like, I need to cool down. It is so warm. But anyways, that's what I mean when I say no one is more excited for fall right now than I am. But I just cannot wait. I'm so excited to put out the decor, to get pumpkins. You guys know the drill. I cannot wait. I am so excited. But with that being said, that's enough of my rambling today. That is not what we're here to talk about. As you can tell by the title of today's episode, we are here to talk about something very, very exciting. I reached out to you guys on the My Thoughts Exactly Instagram, which if you don't follow it already, here is the shameless plug. It is just at My Thoughts Exactly podcast. And I asked you guys what episode topics you were wanting, what you wanted to talk about, what you wanted to hear. And I actually found one that I will say I loved all of them. You all gave great recommendations that I'm going to keep for future episode topics, but one that really stood out to me, and I feel like it's because I am, I don't want to say currently experiencing this, but I have experienced this many times in the past, and I feel like I will also experience this in the future, especially when just thinking about different phases and different chapters of life. And I feel like once you reach a certain age, and I've talked to you guys before about engagements and marriage and children and all of the things that come in the future, hopefully. And I do feel like the topic that we're talking about today can definitely be brought up and talked about when talking about these types of phases that we go through in our lives. And that is grieving your old self or grieving your old life, your past life, going through the grieving process of shutting one door, ending a chapter, and moving on to another. I think that as we get older and as we mature in different stages of our lives, it's easy to feel a sense of grieving for what our lives once were. So that is what we are going to talk about today. And so to start off this episode, I actually want to start it off with a quote that I found. And I found it when I was preparing my notes for today's episode. I remembered seeing this quote once before, and it really rang true. And it does definitely, it falls into the category of what we're talking about today, grieving your old self and your past life. And this is the quote. Letting go of your old self and the process of letting the new you emerge can be one of the scariest experiences of your life. But by leaving behind your old self and taking a leap of faith into the unknown, it might just reveal what you are truly capable of becoming. End quote. So that is the quote. And I do want to say I did a bunch of digging to try and find out who said this quote because I think it's brilliant, but I wasn't able to figure it out. So if you guys know, please let me know. But I do think it definitely hits the nail on the head for what we are talking about today. Now, I know personally in my life, there are many pivotal moments where I can look back at different stages of my life and point out that these are times that I had experienced grieving my old self, moving into different transitional periods of my life. For example, when I graduated high school and was going off to college, shutting that chapter, that was grieving my old self in my own life. The second one I can think of was when I ended my long-term relationship, my last long-term relationship. And even though I was happy to let that go, I was still grieving what my life looked like at the time, and so on and so forth. We'll get into some of the more recent ones that I have experienced of this feeling. But what I have learned through navigating these phases of life is that two things can exist at the same time. And this mindset in particular, that two things can exist at the same time, this has helped me a lot through life, but specifically, it has also helped me through navigating grieving my old self and grieving a past life. And again, two things can exist at the same time. I can be doing what is best for myself. I can be making the right choices for myself, doing what is best for me, but I can also be sad to say goodbye to what my life once looked like. I think that that is okay. And I think that the reason I say that this mindset has helped me a lot through life is I think that many times people look at things in a very black and white way. It has to be one way or another. You either need to be happy or sad, or you need to be, it's very black or white, the emotions that you can sometimes have for different things. But for me, I am someone who feels lots of emotions. I like to hide it and pretend that I don't, but I feel lots of emotions. And I think that by telling myself that multiple things can be true at the same time, it leaves me feeling less overwhelmed. And it also leaves me feeling less alone in my thoughts and my feelings, because I'm able to remind myself that it is okay to feel everything that you're feeling. It is okay to process things however you need to process. Because when pertaining to this specific topic, grieving your old life, the fact of the matter is that life is always changing. It is always evolving, and so are we. And trust me when I say that this is coming from someone who absolutely hates change. And I did not like coming to terms with the fact that life is always changing and we as humans are always evolving. But what I've come to realize is that we are not supposed to live the same life every single day. We are never supposed to, not meet any sort of change or any sort of adversity within our lives. We are supposed to be challenging ourselves and being faced with hard decisions, not all the time, not every day is supposed to be a hard day. Not all decisions are supposed to be hard, but we are supposed to be faced with these choices and with these decisions that need to be made, because we need to grow as human beings. We need to evolve. We need to challenge ourselves. And if you really think about it, when looking at grieving your past life or grieving an old life, it really does make sense. Psychologically, it makes sense that we look back and feel sad about how life once was, or how life isn't the same anymore. And what I really mean by that is that our past lives, our mind has conditioned us and made us believe that our past life, for the most part, everything, each circumstance is going to be different. But a lot of times, and again, every situation will be different, but most times when grieving, what our life used to look like, or grieving a previous chapter, it is because our mind has conditioned us. And it's a defense mechanism. If you think about it, it's It's conditioned us to believe that that period of our life was safe. And that was because we knew what it looked like. We knew what it felt like. We knew how it made us feel. That period of our lives, we have, in our mind, has made us consider it safe. And when you move into a new chapter of your life, you're looking at a blank slate and you do not know what is going to happen. You do not know what is going to come next. And so when you really think about it, no wonder our minds want to run back to our previous lives, because that is the safe option. And our minds want to protect us from the possibility of things going wrong in the future because we don't know what it's going to look like. And so because of this, our minds really have to go through an adjustment period. Our minds have to catch up to where our body physically is, because our mind is looking at something scary, like I said, and saying, nope, that looks uncomfortable. We don't know what's going to happen. Let's run back to what we know to be safe. And by the way, what our minds tell us is safe oftentimes can just be as toxic as anything else. I think a lot of times, I think about in previous relationships specifically, when I think about myself, there are so many times that I have, tried to move on with life and move on in my dating, after going through a series of tumultuous relationships. And even if I would, meet someone who seemed like a good match, seemed like they were a good person, good morals, could be a good fit, my mind is preconditioned to be like, we don't know what's going to happen here. Let's go back to the guy that treated us like shit time and time and time again and has already shown us his true colors, because we already know what's going to happen here. We can't be disappointed here. It's the same kind of mindset that our mind is telling us in this specific circumstance. Same thing when I moved to Nashville, right? We're going to get more into my own personal experiences with this specific topic. But for another example, moving to Nashville, when I first moved here, leading up to it, I was very excited, couldn't wait. It was going to be great, new chapter, fresh start, all the things. I moved here. Couple weeks in, I was like, I can't do it. Not for me. I don't like it. I want to go back to San Diego. It's safe there. I know what life looks like there. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know if I'm going to fit in. I don't know if I'm going to like the people here. I don't know if they're going to like me. So instead of challenging myself and instead of, seeing what could happen in the future, which by the way, could also turn out to be better than I ever could have expected it, which plot twist, it did. I want to run back to San Diego because it's safe. I know what life looks like there. There's no surprises there for me. I don't have to challenge myself, all of the things. So those are just kind of two examples that I could give you right off the bat of how our mind likes to protect us and use that as a defense mechanism to, again, protect us from what the future could hold. But what I want to remind you is what I previously had said, it could end up better than you could ever imagine. And I do think that you need to remind yourself sometimes when you're going through this feeling, when you are starting to feel like you are grieving an old chapter, an old life, your past self, what you need to remind yourself is that sometimes the only way out of a feeling is through it. And that is also another one of those cliche lines that for me personally has brought me a lot of peace, because from someone who likes to guard myself so much from feeling certain things and again protecting myself from feeling emotions that make me feel uncomfortable, what I've learned is that, by shying away from those feelings or by running away from them, I am doing myself the biggest disservice. And a lot of times the only way out of feeling that way and the only way to really grow through all of that is to go through it, to walk through the emotion and just go through it and deal with it so you can get to the other side in a healthy way and you will evolve more as a human. Now, I also want you guys to look at it from a perspective angle as well. I think oftentimes we get really sad, maybe not very sad, maybe I'm speaking too much from personal experience, but each time that I personally have felt this way, feeling, as if I want to run back to a past life, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I feel like I am, I'm not ready or I'm not capable of facing what's coming next. I want to go back to what life used to be. What I need to remind myself is there is beauty in that. And what I mean by that is I need to be grateful for the experiences that I have had. I need to be grateful that I could ever even be sad to move past a certain phase of life or go through a phase of life that is hard to let go of. But on the flip side of that, you also don't need to let go of all of it. And that, again, swinging back to what I said in the beginning about being so black and white, certain people like to be like, it's one thing or another, super black and white. You can still take parts of you throughout each phase of your life. And that is naturally what is going to happen, by the way, whether that's in the form of memories, whether that's in the form of attributes or lessons that you've learned along the way. Again, it doesn't have to be such a harsh contrast. The things that you experienced in the phase of your life that you want so desperately to hold on to, you can take some of those things with you through each and every phase. And that really is the beauty of life. You don't have to completely shut the door or shut the chapter on certain things. I think one of my biggest fears when moving out to Nashville is that I was going to completely detach myself from my life in San Diego that I loved so much. And what I've learned is that truly was not the case. That was an irrational fear. Maybe not irrational, but that was a fear that I didn't need to be afraid of, because I have kept so near and dear to me all of the things that have still made me feel so close to San Diego, aka my friends. Still keep in touch with so many of my friends from San Diego that still feel like home to me, that still, after so many years, 10, 11 years, I still have that same relationship to them. I also go back whenever I feel homesick, and I do consider Nashville home now, but there is a different feeling going back to where you really grew up. I allow myself to go back whenever I, want to, or whenever I can. I don't go back as much anymore because like I said, I have walked through the emotion rather than gone around it. But same thing, I'm able to continue to involve that in my life and involve San Diego in my life as much as I want to, because it is such a big part of my life. And when I left San Diego, it wasn't because I was just going to close the chapter forever. And I'm using, the moving analogy because I think that we're in the time frame right now of school starting. A lot of people are going off to college. A lot of people are moving to new cities, new chapters are starting. And so if you have that fear of moving, if you have that fear of going somewhere where you're afraid that you're not going to know how to, be able to navigate this new chapter and navigate through moving in a new city or a new school, just know that you don't have to leave everything behind. I also think it's important to remember, and just like for my own personal experience, I can say that each phase of my life where I felt like I was shedding a prior version of myself, or I am shedding or closing the chapter on a previous version of myself, I truly can say this, I have found a new version of myself that I love so much more. And I think that that's a big thing with change. I think it's easy for us. And just when looking at change in general, I think it can be categorized as a very negative thing and a very scary thing, because again, it is the unknown. We don't know what's coming after change. And a lot of times, and for a lot of people, that's a scary thought. And like I said in the beginning, as I've said many times on this podcast, I hate change. I really don't like it. I like being comfortable. I like knowing what's coming next. I am the type of person that will watch the same TV show over and over and over again. That's why I've seen Grey's Anatomy about 7 times. It's why I've seen One Tree Hill about 11 times. It is why I really will not watch any new TV show ever, because I get anxiety not knowing what's coming next. And I probably am exposing myself right there. I know that that's not like a normal thing to do, by the way, but it just goes to show you, and it just adds to my argument to just say that, like, I don't like change. But what I can tell you and what I can say with full confidence is that going into each chapter of my life where I felt uncomfortable by change, not only was I challenged and really grew as a person, I evolved, I learned lessons, I was able to grow into the person that I was meant to be at that period of my life. I also can't I look back and I can't even imagine what my life would have looked like had I not done that. And I think that it's easy to look back when you look at certain, phases of your life, certain time frames, and you say, oh, like I missed this period of my life, which, by the way, I want to mention just before we go any further, this is so normal. It's such a normal feeling. And if you feel like no one else feels like this, if you feel like everyone just seems really excited for the future and I don't, that's okay. That is a normal feeling. And even though we can't necessarily change the reality of the fact that life does change and we are going to go through transitional periods, we are going to go through new things in life, new phases, new chapters, what I can tell you is that the feeling is normal. It's a normal feeling. You're not crazy. It's not just you. This is a normal feeling. And something that has also really helped me when I go through phases of feeling like this is the fact that each and every time I have felt this feeling, like I said, I find a new version of myself that I like so much more. I grow to love myself. I evolve as a person. I gain so many new memories and experiences, but also like I can't even imagine what my life would have looked like. And the thing to note on this is that I know, and this also helps me get through this feeling and navigate through it. I know that there is going to be a time in my life where I'm going to look back at this feeling or this moment right now, sitting on this chair, talking to you. I'm going to look back and be like, I miss that phase. I miss this period of my life. I miss that time frame for whatever reason, whether it's because you feel like at a certain time you had less responsibility, or you felt like you were more comfortable where you were at. You felt like whatever it was that you feel when you look back at past versions of yourself, you are going to have that same exact feeling one day about where you are in this current moment. And that really, again, draws back into the perspective thing. That mindset has really helped me because instead of realizing that I don't want to look back, I don't want to waste time looking back and grieving a life I once had, when instead I can be living the phase that I'm in currently out to the fullest. And I'm not able to do that if I'm constantly just being like, oh, I miss this phase. I miss this chapter. I miss this portion of my life. It's now up to me to make this phase something that I will miss. And I know it's scary going into it because you don't know what's going to happen. And I'm going to give an example. And the example that I'm going to give is one that I don't think gets talked about a lot. And I feel like it doesn't get talked about a lot for several reasons. And I think that one of those reasons is because I think it's just a little bit of a taboo subject where people don't want to admit that this is how they're feeling. And if they don't feel like this and I'm just exposing myself, then so freaking be it. But I will say, when I felt like this and I turned to my friends and I was honestly a little bit ashamed to admit this and to say this to them because I felt like it was such a taboo topic. I felt like it was such something that no one is supposed to admit. And I felt like something was wrong because I was feeling this way. But what I learned is that, again, it's a very normal feeling. And I think that we would all be surprised how similar we all feel, and how we're not alone in the feelings that we have. So my example for this is when I moved in with Hayden. And this is not to say, I want to preface this because I think that this can get easily misconstrued. And this is why I don't necessarily even want to say this out loud, because again, I think that this can be taken the wrong way. So let me just make this wildly clear. I have always been head over heels in love with Hayden. I was so excited to move in with him. Moving in with him was honestly probably more of my idea than it was his. I couldn't wait. I'm so happy we made the decision. It truthfully was the best decision for our relationship, and I couldn't imagine it going any other way. So I just want to just blanket statement that right now. What I will say though, when we moved in, I was a very independent person. And I was someone who after leaving my last relationship, my last long term relationship, when I left him, that specifically with my ex was a very codependent relationship. I told myself getting out of that relationship that I would never allow myself to be in something that was so toxic and codependent ever again. I didn't have a identity. I didn't have my own, I didn't know myself. And I told myself I'm never going to let myself get lost like that again. When I started dating, specifically when I met Hayden and when him and I were getting serious, and then when we moved in together, I had this fear. I had a fear that I was going to lose my independence. And I had a fear that by moving in with Hayden, I was going to be losing a past version of myself. And I was afraid of that because I was so afraid of landing back in a situation that I once was in. Again, that is not Hayden's fault whatsoever. It is 100% on me because Hayden is the person who has let me be the most independent. Hayden, what's the word? He's my biggest hype man. He truthfully advocates for my independence unlike anything I've ever seen before. And all of my friends, when we talk about our relationships and stuff, I think people are shocked at how independent Hayden, like how just secure he is in himself, that he is able to be with someone who is so independent, like hyper independent. But I also, we lean on each other in different ways. And, we have our relationship, but I also have me and who I am as a person outside of the relationship as well. I think you get what I'm saying. But it was a fear of mine going into this relationship and specifically moving in together because I was like, I don't want to lose who I am. And I'm afraid that if I jump into, especially moving in with someone, I am going to be leaving behind a past version of myself. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. And when we moved in together, that definitely was something that I had a hard time navigating. We both honestly struggled in different ways living together in the very, very beginning because it is a transition period. There's going to be growing pains, and no one really talks about that. And for us, we definitely, we dealt with it and we communicated and we were able to just work through it. But in the beginning, and again, this is just me being very transparent. In the beginning, I struggled because I was like, is this me letting go of my independence? And what I needed to realize, and over time I did, was that two things could be true at the same time. Okay, there that is again. I can be in a happy, healthy relationship with a man who completely is, you know, such an amazing person and wants me to be independent and is not holding me back from anything in life and is really my biggest cheerleader. And I also can be independent and have my own version of myself and be a person outside of the relationship and, have my friends and have my girls' nights and have my, fun dinner dates and all the things that I loved that came with a certain level of independence and living on my own. Before I moved in with Hayden, I was living in an apartment by myself. And it really took some time for me to understand that and sit with that and be like, okay, two things can be true at the same time. You know, yes, I'm letting go and I'm saying goodbye to single Savannah, single, wild, crazy party girl Savannah. That part I'm putting to bed. But I'm taking with me the fun side of me. I'm taking with me the independence. I'm taking with me the girl who, is still me at the end of the day. And I'm in a girl that still loves him, always have. But it doesn't mean that I'm not saying goodbye to anything bad. I'm just moving into a new phase, and it was scary for me because I was like, I think also this is just me now venting at this point, but I think also because we moved in together very quickly, I was really just afraid. I didn't know if it was going to work or not, and luckily it did, and luckily again it was such a great decision for us, but at the time I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm giving up, my independence at this point. But again, I really wasn't. I just needed time to sit with the fact that, two things can exist at the same time. And so for me, after I realized that, it wasn't as catastrophic as my mind was making it, and my mind was just trying to get me to run back to my defense mechanism and get me to run back to what was comfortable, when in reality, what was comfortable was toxic for me. And what Hayden offers is just such a breath of fresh air, and he's such a genuinely good person. And I did not know how to handle that at the time. And it took time to unlearn bad behaviors and unlearn my bad habits of wanting to run back to what was toxic for me because at the time it was just comfortable. Once I was able to fully digest all of that, I realized like, oh, this is actually a really good thing. And I need to allow myself to experience good things. And I need to allow myself to understand that I deserve a good thing. And now I can tell you, being on the opposite side, or not the opposite side, but being on, the other side of that feeling, because I had to walk through it and not around it, being on the other side of that feeling, I can tell you that I am so much happier than I was. In my past life, I have made so many new memories, so many more amazing experiences. My relationship with Hayden has grown so much stronger than it ever has been. I would not change the decision for the world. And I truthfully cannot imagine what it would have been like had we not, moved and progressed the way that we did. So I just wanted to say that like as just an example and kind of a vulnerable example, because I don't want it to just be like some basic standard example. Like I do want you to know that I have gone through these types of phases and gone through these thoughts, and I've felt badly about thinking them because I feel like they're not the societal norm. And I think that people often, really romanticize on the outside what their feelings look like. And I think that it's important to really like dig deep and be like, okay, no, like these other feelings are normal that you're feeling. It's not a bad thing that you're feeling them, but you just need to recognize that you are and be aware of them and work through them and be able to work through them in a healthy way, to communicate along the way. And that's something that Hayden and I did with each other throughout the whole way. We still do it. And it's really been beneficial for our relationship. But we're not here to talk about my relationship. That was just an example. But yeah, that's basically, what I've really learned about grieving your past lives is that, and past lives sounds weird because it almost sounds like, reincarnation or whatever, but in a weird way, just stick with me on this one. In a weird way, you are evolving into a new version of yourself. You are going through a cycle of evolution. You are going through a cycle of growing into a new and better version of yourself. Every chapter that you are walking through the book of your life is leading you to the next place you're meant to be. And so, yeah, sometimes change looks scary. And yeah, sometimes it's uncomfortable and we don't want to do it. But imagine what your life is going to be like once you go through it, and what your life could be like when you do. I mean, I'm sure there's many circumstances that you guys can look at in your life and be like, I can't imagine what my life would have been like had I not done that. I can't imagine what my life would have been like if I didn't make that decision. And maybe at the time, that decision seemed scary. Maybe at the time, that decision seemed like something you weren't 100% confident in. But now looking back, it has led you to a completely different phase and chapter of your life. It was a stepping stone of where you went in the future and where you're going to continue to go. And I do think that, again, recognizing the feelings of, I'm leaving a part of me behind. I'm closing a specific chapter and I'm moving on in my life. And sometimes that looks scary. But again, remind yourself how great it can be on the other side of it, and remind yourself of what can come out of you challenging yourself and you pushing yourself to bounds and, limits that you didn't know that you were capable of. Again, I'm going to go back to that quote where it says, by leaving behind your old self and taking a leap of faith into the unknown, it might just reveal what you are truly capable of becoming. And so, just remind yourself of that. Remind yourself that you are going to meet many different versions of yourself in this lifetime. You are going to see yourself in many different ways, in many different chapters. Like I just said earlier, I'm going to miss the phase of my life where it was just me and Hayden in church in our house, and we were, going through what felt like a simple life at the time, because right now it does. And I love this phase of my life right now, and I'm so excited for what's to come. But you hear it with parents all the time. They would never change anything for, they would go through it all again for their kids, but at the same time it's like, I miss what my life used to look like. It's a change, it's a shift. Sometimes that happens and it's okay. It's just a natural part of life, and just regulating to a new normal, figuring out what this phase is going to look like for you moving forward. I just in general want you guys to be comfortable with feeling some of these feelings that just oftentimes feel or are portrayed to be, a little taboo. Sometimes we're not supposed to feel this way, or at least we're not supposed to say that we feel this way, because it could give off the impression that we, aren't happy, or could give off the impression of us not being fully confident in our decisions. But it's okay to be fearful of the unknown, but it's also really important, again, two things can be true at the same time, to challenge yourself, to leap into the unknown, to take that leap of faith, to take that jump, to risk it, and to see what happens. Because I promise you, a lot of times, maybe not every time, but a lot of the time, you're going to be really, really happy that you did. So I'm going to leave it at that there today, you guys. I hope you hear where I'm coming from. But with that being said, you guys, that is all for me today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of My Thoughts Exactly. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah. I'm your host of My Thoughts Exactly. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Friday. You're not going to want to miss it. I'll be back next week with a brand new one for you guys, and I will see you there. Bye, guys.